or just just tell me to hurry up. So last week or 2 weeks ago, Brian took my place. Thank you, Brian. But he taught on deception, right? So this morning, I know some of you guys were with us as we did some classes. So some of you might know the answers to this, but I made this myself. So I'm going to try and trick you. I'm going to try and deceive you. Now, Micah, you already know the answer, so you watch me make them. But for the rest of you children, one or two of these, I should say, are smaller than the others. Can you guys pick out which are the smallest of the two? Which one are you picking, Azariah? These two are the smallest one? What do you guys, what do you other children think? You pick these two? Do all of you agree? Betty, what do you think? Which one is the smallest one? They're none the smallest one? They're all the same? What do you think, Justice? You don't know. So Betty, when we played the game, they were all the same size. There were only two of them, right? And so the way of the master, these two are exactly the same. But because I'm trying to trick you guys, I did make the white one bigger. Let's see, I got to get them all in order. And the white one is definitely bigger. Okay? But you guys were playing by my rules, making me, I put them in order to make it look like it was smaller. Now, what if you guys would have said, what if you would have started questioning me and said, hey, can you put it in a different order, right? It's a lot easier to see that the bigger one is now bigger, right? If I put it in that order. So what you kids want to do is learn not to play the game that I am trying to present to you. Don't play. Start asking questions. Someone says something, the biggest thing they don't like is if you ask questions. Why are you doing it this way? Why? Can you change it around? Because the story that I'm going to tell you today is about David and Goliath. And Goliath was out there on the battlefield, and he wanted to play it his game. He wanted to play battle with swords and with shields. Did David play his game? No, he didn't, because he would have lost. So ask questions, learn. So before we go into the story, I want to ask you children, how did David really kill Goliath? What's your first answer? What's the first thing that comes to mind? How did David really kill Goliath? He cut his head off, yeah. Most people think he used a stone, which is correct. He used that knocked him down. Most people think he cut his head off, which did kill him. But what did David say actually helped him, Micah? With God. Do you think David, the little David with a sword and big Goliath, he could actually cut his head off without God's help? No, he couldn't. So the bottom answer is God helped him. And David knew that all along. And I'm going to bring that out in the story today, how God helped David. But first of all, school is getting ready to start, right? How many of you are back in school, or how many of you started your homeschooling? None of you? Some of you? So I got to see how it is for you to be in your guys' seat. 2 weeks ago, I think it was, I had to go to school. Think about that. It's not so fun to be a student. I'd much rather be a teacher up here telling you guys how to do things. But it was good for me to turn the perspective, because some teachers you can learn from, others not so much. So that's why I appreciate when Brian or some other people come up here, because we all have a different way of explaining things, and not all of you learn the same. So when I say it one way, you're like, I don't know what he's saying. If Brian says another way, you're like, that makes sense. So I experienced that in my schooling as they're trying to train me how to drive a big truck. One guy just told me everything I was doing wrong, which he needed to so I could tell my test. But what if I would stand up here and you guys, I'm trying to tell you the gospel message. I'd say, Micah, you're a sinner. You lied yesterday. You know you're going to hell, right? If you keep on lying. Yeah, you know you lied. but I wouldn't tell you how to fix it. How would that make you feel? Not very good, right? So what I have to do is say, Micah, you realize that you're a sinner. Now, why do you sin? Can anyone answer that? Because to help you understand things, I didn't know how to get that truck in gear. He was telling me, you're grinding the gears. I was like, I know I'm grinding the gears, but tell me how to fix it. He didn't tell me how to fix it. So we all know we're sinners. Why do we sin? Does anyone know? Why do we sin? That's the first question. The guy that really helped me said, Reuben, why are you grinding gears? I said, I don't know how to not grind gears. I don't understand how it works. Okay? Then he said, okay, I can see that you're confused. So try this. Try letting off the gas and it'll just go right in place. So I did. There she goes. Okay? So why do we sin? Most people say Adam and Eve sinned, therefore we're sinners. And part of that is true. Yes, we are in a cursed world. But James tells us that it says sin comes from our own evil desires, okay? We follow our lusts, and then we make a choice to actually sin. So we can't just blame Adam and Eve. We actually choose to sin ourselves. So remember that. Now that you understand that we are all sinners, yes, we actually choose to sin. How can we correct that behavior? Okay, we admit we're sinners. How can we not sin? How can I not grind the gear? Okay? Does anyone, how don't we sin? How do we stop sinning? We understand what makes us sin, right? Then we understand in Romans 6:11 it says, be dead unto sin and alive unto God. Okay? So once you get that concept, now we're dead unto sin and alive unto God. But see, what those teachers were trying to get me to do in Missouri, they were trying to get me to drive perfectly so that once I do my actual road test, I wouldn't mess up. So they were very critical, and rightly so. They were trying to train me. So that's what I'm trying to do, point out all your wrongs, because I was doing a test. If I would fail the test, I wouldn't make it. That's what I'm trying to do, saying each one of you children have sinned, and if you don't know how to overcome it, you come before the judge, you're going to fail. I don't want you guys to fail. I want you to know how to win. They wanted me to win in the worst way. They went out of the way. They spent even an extra night training with me. They went out of the way for me, and I passed my test. But I had to learn that if I had a weakness, and that was I couldn't shift it. Okay? I had to identify my weakness and say, you know what? I'm going to take a totally different truck that I don't have to shift so I can come home with a CDL. I had to adjust. That was my weakness. So on this earth, while we're on this earth, it's our testing ground. We're going to mess up, and God realizes that, so he has a plan to help us, to save us. What is God's plan to help us, to save us, so we pass our tests on this earth? Does anyone know the plan of salvation? What is it? So if you don't know the plan of salvation, like I know that I passed my CDL because of all the experience I went through, the testing. Then the guy sat next to me. We did all, and he marked every time I missed something, he marked. And at the end, he said, you have passed. So all those sins that I did, all those marks I missed, he said, they're forgiven. They don't add up. So that's exactly what Jesus did. If you realize, like Elmer said, that he died on the cross, he did something for us. And if we realize that he gave us a gift, you will open your arms and you will receive that gift. Instead of asking for forgiveness, you say, thank you for forgiving me because you've received that. And then your testimony will be the story of how you got saved. So what I'm telling you about the CDL is a story that actually happened, and I can relate to when I have my CDL. The story, your testimony is a story of when your sins got forgiven, what you went through. So I want each of you kids to think about your test. And some of them just might not have much. It's not a feeling or emotion. It's just, this is when I got forgiven. This is when my sins were gone. So I want you kids to realize that and understand it so you know how it works. I still don't understand those gears, okay? I'm just going to keep driving automatic till I do understand. All I need is more seat time. If you don't understand the Bible, all you need is to read it more, okay? It'll come. So we are going to dive into 1 Samuel chapter 16. Remember when I was here 4 weeks ago, we were talking about how Saul was king. He disobeyed God, and then Samuel went looking for a new king. So this is where it starts. And the Lord said to Samuel, how long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill thy horn with oil, and I send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. So over there was a little boy. So it says, so can you guys, do you understand why Saul was rejected for king? Why was Saul rejected? You guys know the story? Why was Saul rejected? And this helps you guys understand, put things in proper perspective, because if you don't understand the story, you won't remember it. So Saul rejected God by disobeying God. So therefore, God rejected Saul because he didn't obey him. So he had to find a new king that would obey him. And that new king was who? Who was the new king that he was going to go find? Huh? No, Samuel was the prophet going looking for him. David. And who was David? A clue right here. He was a little shepherd boy. Why do you think David was out here, a little shepherd boy? Do you think this was David's testing ground? Do you think David was learning some things as he was out here in the field? What do you guys think? Was he learning something? What was he learning? Remember the one time he was out there, and what is a shepherd's job? Is to protect the sheep. What happened one day? Something came to attack his sheep, and it was a big old lion. David's a little boy. How is he going to keep this lion from eating his sheep? What does he have? A sling and a stone. And he put his harp down. He grabbed his sling and his stone, and he would get good at it. And most of the time, it would scare the lion away. But this particular day, there was a bear and a lion. It probably wasn't the same day, but a bear also came. Well, with the two together, they're not scared. And this bear came right up, and he grabbed one of the little lambs. What did David do? David was not scared. He ran up, and it says he grabbed the bear by the beard. If you didn't know a bear had a beard, you do now. That hair that's under his chin, he grabbed him, and he used a billy club, and he smote him. Whop! Guess what the bear did? If you whack something over the head real hard, what does it do? It opens its mouth. He killed the bear right then and there. And he saved the little lamb. Right? So David knew him as a little, he said, you know what? I could have never killed this big bear and this mean-looking lion by myself. He said, God is with me. And he knew God was with him because when he got anointed with that oil, it says the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So the Spirit of God came upon David. He could do mighty things with the Lord's help, even though he was a little man, a little boy. But what happened with that Spirit, it left King Saul. And King Saul became troubled from that day forward. Okay, now King Saul was troubled, and the guys helping Saul said, you know what, you need someone to come play some nice music and soothe your soul. Your spirit is troubled. They said, we know just the man. He said, there is the son of Jesse, a Bethlehemite. He is cunning in playing, and a mighty valiant man, a man of war, prudent in matters, a comely person, and the Lord is with him. What a statement. What an identity. The people recognized who David was as a young boy. And you children can have that identity if the Lord is with you. I mean, let me read that again. He is cunning in playing. He's a mighty valiant man, even though he was young. They called him a man because he acted like one. No boy in his right mind would go out and fight a lion and a bear, right? Only men do that. He's a man of war. I don't know if he ever fought war except against these guys, he was a prudent in matters, a comely person, and the Lord is with him. That is quite a statement. And if you guys would like a verse like that, I would love to know it by heart, hang it up, and that would be like a goal we could work for to become, right? So it came to pass when the evil spirit from God came upon Saul that he would become angry. And then they would call for David. So Saul was a king, right? And this evil spirit would come upon him because the good spirit had left him. And he would become anxious and angry, and they would call for David, and he would come, play his harp, and it says, Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him. So if there's a good spirit and the evil spirit, light and darkness. If there's darkness in a room and you guys turn on the light, which one has to go? The darkness. It has to leave. So the same way here. He has a dark spirit. He has a light spirit. If he would come in, the light spirit would overpower the dark spirit, and it had to go. And he became well again. He came in his right mind. So now we jump right into chapter 17. It says, the Philistines gathered together their army to battle. So the Philistines were against the Israelites. Who were the good people and who were the bad people? Zach or Justice, who was good and who was bad? These are the Philistines. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down, Philistines. Thumbs up for Israelites. Those are the good people, okay? They were fighting each other. Why were they fighting? Light and darkness again, right? So what happened is they were getting, the way they did battle back then, they'd get all the armies lined up together. There was a hillside here and a hillside here. There was a big valley in between. They would all line up on their hillside, encourage one another like the team members do before playing a big game. And then their plan was to come down in the valley, each come down, and because they only had spears and swords, they would fight each other. It'd be a close battle. They had some bows and arrows, yeah, but for hard battle, most of the time it was close combat. They didn't have any snipers or anything like that, no drones, so they had to come in close, and they were getting lined up to do that. They were getting all lined up and in order, and they were just ready to come together down in this valley and fight, when all of a sudden, a big guy stepped into the middle and said, why are you guys lining up to fight one another? He said, I have a different plan. Why don't, he said, am I not a Philistine, and ye are servants to Saul? Just choose one man. We don't all have to fight together. Choose one man to come down and fight me. I am for the Philistines. You choose a guy on your side, and only the two of us fight. We don't have to kill, not everyone has to kill everyone, just two of us. And whoever wins the battle, if we win, you will be our servants. If you win, we will be your servants. He said, call down a man. Did anyone come down? No. Why not? This is a big, scary dude, okay? There was no one as big as him. Who should have went down to fight him? Can you think of anyone in the Israelite army that was a head and a shoulder taller than anyone else? Who was that man? He happened to be Saul. He was the king. He was a head and shoulder taller than anyone else. And he said, bring me a man. And Saul wouldn't go down. Why? It says here that Saul was greatly afraid. Okay? He was scared. And rightly so. Listen to this guy, this champion. He had a helmet of brass upon his head. Okay? The coat that he was wearing, it says it was a coat of mail, weighed 125 pounds. Have you guys ever picked up a feed sack, a 100-pound feed sack, and tried to run with it? It's heavy. This was 125 pounds, and what the coat of mail means that, have you ever seen fish with scales on them? The scales flex back and forth. So this mail was stacked on top of each other so that he could move and swing his sword and flex. If it'd be a solid piece, he'd be like a robot. He couldn't move. So it flexed for him. So then Not only that, he had greaves of brass upon his legs, so his legs were protected. They couldn't take out his shins. He had a spear like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 15 pounds. So the biggest sledgehammer that you guys have, or I have a pretty big sledgehammer because we do excavating. I got to break some concrete. It takes a lot to pick it up. It's 15 pounds. Just his spear point weighed 15 pounds. And I think this, in my mind, this picture is accurate for a weaver's beam. At first, when I think of a weaver's beam, I used to think it was a 4x4, like a big 4x4. But I'm a hunter, and I have arrows, and I try and get the skinniest arrow to get the most penetration. So if you're trying to kill something, you want something narrow shafted so you get penetration. And I looked up a weaver's, how they weave their cloth in and out, and you actually have to hold it and weave it in and out. So I don't think it would be this big overgrown 4x4. Now I could be wrong, I don't know, but that's just, I think this picture, for in my mind as a hunter, as I think that's accurate. It would be a long weaver's, it's probably be strong and flexible, arrows flex and all the rest, so you can throw it. You got to be able to throw it. But a big man like that, don't get me wrong, could throw a 4x4 or a tree. So I don't know what he used, but they were scared of him. Now, I kind of like how he went about to fight. Like, what if our leaders today, what if our presidents today would do battle like that? I mean, they say, why does the whole country have to get involved and all the people die? If the presidents disagree, just get in a headlong battle and fight it out and may the best man win. Except in our situation right now, we'd lose. So we wouldn't want to go that route today, but I wish we would, trust me, we would vote differently if we would fight like that. So he wanted to fight. No one would come down and fight him. How many days did Goliath stand here and taunt them? Does anyone know? It was a long time. It was days upon days upon days. How many days exactly? How many days was Noah in the ark? 40. So 40 days he taunted them. And think about it. The first 10 days, there was a valley down here. I bet the first 10 days he only came down to the bottom of the valley and yelled up the other side. No one came to challenge him. The next 10 days, he probably came a little closer. About a month later, he was at the bottom of their valley. And then one day, Jesse was getting worried about his sons. Jesse had 3 boys in the Israelites' army. And he told David, why don't you take some bread, some cheese, and there was something else, 3 things, and go over and feed the boys and see how they're doing. And David happened to go over there, and that morning it says Goliath came up the hill. He came up. So he was actually starting to go up their side of the mountain. And what does it say? It says they all ran. They were scared. And I would be too. I'm not degrading them, but if these are the good people and these are the bad and God is with them and not with them, what are you afraid of, right? But they were looking at the circumstance. They were looking at the things around, and they all ran. And David happened to be there that day, and he said, let's see. As he talked with his brothers, there came up the champion, and he spoke according to them the same words, "Is there no one to fight for us?" And the men fled from him and were sore afraid. And David spoke to the men that stood by him and said, "What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine?" He was starting to get crazy. He said, "You guys are all running. What is in it for me if I go kill this Philistine?" And they said, the king will enrich him with great riches, will give him his daughter, and will make his father's house tax-free. You never have to pay taxes again if you survive this battle. If you don't make it, then you won't have to pay taxes anyway. But so that's what was going to happen. Now his brothers were standing there, and they heard David ask that question. And they said, "David, why did you even come today? You're just a little shepherd boy. Did you leave the sheep by themselves? They were, it says, his eldest brother's anger was kindled against him. Now, I'm not sure why, but the eldest brother was, in Samuel's eye, was supposed to be a king, but they anointed the youngest one. And I'm sure it did something to their insides, their pride, to have a younger brother be a king, and they were all bigger, stronger, bolder. They were fighting. He was at home watching the sheep. Why did you come, David? I know what's in your heart, they said. You just want to see a battle. So David was like, you know what? I can't get anywhere with these guys. So he turned and he talked to some other people. And as soon as the whole camp heard that there's a guy talking smack, that he wants to fight Goliath, word got out to King Saul. And King Saul wanted to talk to this guy that wants to fight Goliath. But as soon as he saw it was David, he said, oh my, David, you're only a youth. You're a young boy. He said, this Goliath has been a warrior from his youth. How are you going to fight him? And in my own words, he said, the Lord is with thee. But I don't think he really meant that, because if Saul would have really meant the Lord is with thee, why is he trying to put his armor, put his sword, put his shield on David? Yes, that's how that Saul learned to do battle, and Saul won a lot of battle. He was a great warrior. But that's not how you defeat this giant. If you want to go sword to sword, spear to spear, this guy is going to win every time. But David said, all right, put the armor on me. I'll try. He put it on him. He couldn't move. He's like, this isn't going to work, Saul. And he didn't obey him. He took everything off, and he took it all off. And he said, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off. And he took his staff in his hand, and he chose him 5 stones. Took all of this off. Took 5 stones. His sling in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near to David, and the man that bare the shield went before them. So I don't have a man bearing a shield, and so he wouldn't be holding this shield. There was to be another man that would give him his shield, went before him. And as soon as the Philistine looked about and saw that David wasn't scared of him, he was coming up the hill, David wasn't scared. He stood there and he realized, this guy wants to fight me. This is actually one guy that wants to fight. But as soon as he saw it was a little guy and he only had a stick, he said, what, do you think I'm a dog? What do you guys, I mean, if the neighbor lets his dog out and we grab a stick and we chase him away, right? He said, what do you think? I'm a little dog? You can just hit me with a little stick and I'm going to run away? He got mad. Okay. Well, plan number 1, well, let me keep reading. And it says, and the Philistine cursed David by his gods. So that was a big mistake, right? He cursed David by his gods. So the first thing, David was a man after God's own heart, right? I'm sure he knew the Bible. And think about it. In Leviticus 24:16, he said, the Bible says, he that blasphemed the name of the Lord shall surely be put to death. And how was he to be put by death? In the Old Testament, how did they kill someone? By stones, right? They stoned him. So David said, this guy's blaspheming the name of God. He picked up 5 stones and he said, I'm going to do what the Bible says. I'm going to stone you, right? He put those in his pocket, and when he cursed God, he said, it's over. I don't even have, the battle isn't even mine. It's the Lord. You're cursing God. I'm just being a servant of God, and I'm going to stone you exactly what the word says. Well, this guy got so mad because he didn't know the Bible. When you get mad and anxious, what do? You get tunnel vision. He focused in on that person. He started going for David. Well, that's exactly what David needed. He was steady. He was coming right toward David. Did David hesitate? Did David get scared? No. What did David do? Exactly what he did for the lion and the bear. First of all, the Goliath said, I'm a kill you and feed your flesh to the birds. David wasn't scared. He mouthed right back. He said, today I'm going to kill you and all your servants, the whole Philistine army, and we're going to feed them all to the birds. Not just him, but all of them. And that made Goliath even madder. He was so mad, he started coming for David. David was quick. That was one of David's, he was fast. And he said, let's see, and it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And as he ran, he put his hand in his pocket, grabbed a stone. Now remember, Goliath is mad and coming for him. David's running toward him, and he has a bullseye right here. David just swings it, and right in his head, and it says it sunk in. If it sinks in, it makes a dent, right? This was probably, I don't know how big of a stone, and it had to be moving pretty quick to make a dent. Well, what happened? Saul could not handle that big dent in his forehead, and he fell down, it says, face first on the ground. Now, David didn't take a sword or anything, right? He just had what he had to defend all the bear and stuff, and Goliath's sword fell out of his hand when he fell, and David went on up, grabbed the sword, and finished business. Right? So, what I want you kids to learn today is there were 3 voices down in Missouri trying to tell me what to do. I had 3 teachers, right? 3 different voices. I had to discern which one helped me in my circumstance to pass the test. In this circumstance, David had 3 voices. Remember, first he came and his brothers talked to him. They said they made him insignificant. Insignificant means he's a nobody. Who are you to be out here on the battlefield? You're just a little guy. You should be watching the sheep, right? But David didn't listen to those voices. He turned around and started talking to someone else. He's like, you guys aren't encouraging me. You're not helping me. This is what the Lord called me to do, but you guys aren't helping. Like, he knew what he was supposed to do, so he didn't even listen to him. He turned to another voice. Then he remained unshaken, and he ended up in front of King Saul. What did King Saul, what kind of voice did he have? He said, David, you're inadequate. You're not big enough. You're not strong enough. You're too weak. Well, he didn't listen to that voice either, because he knew God had told him what to do, because God was with him. Not only that, when he came out to the battlefield, the actual guy that he was fighting cursed him and belittled him. That didn't stop David. He even criticized his weapon of choice. You come to me with a stick? So once again, David refused to listen to any voice except the Lord God. He silenced Goliath by saying, this battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So he recognized he was not doing this on his terms, on his strength. It was the Lord's. And so today I want you to realize there's a lot of voices around you, and even sometimes in your head. Okay? But they only have as much power as you allow them. If the first voice that David would have listened to, he would have had to go back home and watch the sheep. And I'm pretty sure the Israelite army would have lost to this giant. So David didn't listen to that, but it had no power over him. So we are in the New Testament today. Trust me, you kids will not have to fight a giant that looks like this. You won't. But there are other things that we fight that in Ephesians it says our battle isn't against flesh and blood. Okay, this was flesh and blood. This was an actual guy. Our battle it's against spiritual wickedness. It says, wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God. Okay, not of man. Take the armor of God. And you're going to look like just a man without any armor. But I bet if you could have had spiritual eyes and looked at David, I guarantee that 15-pound spearhead would not have even come close, penetrated anything in David, even if he would have stuck it in, because he had the armor of God protecting him. There's no way he could have lost. So take courage in that. It says, so that when you are in battle, that you may be able to stand. So with that, I'm going to leave this picture up of David winning and Goliath on the ground, so that you understand if you have that armor on, you guys will always win. And with that, you are dismissed.
Good stuff. I grew up in a religion that had a very air. But when I found out that, under the Old Testament, I found out that it's not what I do, but what Jesus did for me. It broke it all up to where I understood it's a free gift of salvation. Maybe we could say it this way. In the Old Testament, they had their Sabbath. Can you turn the screen on?
I don't have the remote. I think it's right beside Chuck.
In the Old Testament, they had the Sabbath at the end of the week. So you worked all week long and then you rest. That's really what the Old Testament promised. You get eternal life if you work during the week of your life, so to speak. All your life long. You work and then hope at the end that God will give you rest. In the New Testament, you have your Sabbath first day of the week. And then you work. And the work then is not to get your rest. The work is out of the fact you already have your rest, and now it's just you're in a vineyard. You're working what God has taught you to do, not to get or to earn the Sabbath rest because it's already taken care of. Now you're working in God's work, and you gain rewards from that. Does that make sense? All right. Just so that we understand, we're not trying to learn to do the right things and then pass the test. Christ has, so if we just further delineate what Reuben was saying,